Hello, hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter. Welcome to In Time. With me, as always, is Mr. Hat and his human
Vehicle.
vehicle. Well, I was going to say unknown growth, but I don't know what got me thinking about that. You certainly haven't been excised through surgery with however many stitches. I'll thank your wife for that imagery. Thank you. And as always, Ansgar Odinson.
Hey, everybody. I know that Nick wishes I wasn't here, but here I am anyway.
Ansgar, I love having you here. What else could possibly make me look so good?
Ooh,
We also
shots
have
fired.
we also have with us, yeah, finally, we finally have with us Neil 604 Atheist. Neil, how are you?
I'm doing well. I am still showing symptoms of a cold that started about a month and a bit ago. So, it just seems to really dug in and really like me for some reason. So,
But Ansgar was talking about that. I guess he had some. I guess he had a cold too, and
Oh yeah,
he
cold.
was complaining.
It was just
Yeah, he was
cold.
complaining
No big
about
deal.
I can't breathe. My lungs are 45% filled with fluid, and
Yeah.
he's
I
built
keep
like a
trying to
tank.
fill mine with fluid, but it just keeps going in.
Well,
Oh
thank you,
man.
thank you very much for coming. After
My
you
pleasure.
canceled twice on us, I mean, Jesus. Um, so please, nobody fact check that one. Nobody fact check that one, please.
Hit me
Um,
up in messages. I'll set you straight.
yeah. Well, honestly, I tried to get him to rage on us for the fact that we cancel. Well, we cancel. There were mistakes were made,
It's
and
complicated.
Shit happens.
it's complicated. Shit happens. So we blew him off twice, and I was sitting there.
Well,
I was.
that's not my job in the contract to do the blowing off. We sent Nick to blow him off.
Okay, that's the kind of show this is going to be. That's the kind of show this is going to be.
It's okay, Nick. There's some chocolates in the mail for you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, please. I profess my love for Ansgar on Twitter. He was like, "Oh, you didn't mean it that way." I was like, "No, I guess if you don't want it to, I guess I didn't mean it that way, but fine." Oh, but so we blew him off, and I was just sitting there going, he was supremely Canadian about it, which means he basically apologized for our screw ups. Like, and then I was just like, what's it going to take to get you angry about this? And he was just like, oh, I'm livid with you guys. I was like, thank you. I'm an American. I don't feel validated unless somebody's yelling at me for something.
That's what Twitter was invented for, right? So that we could all yell at each other and feel validated.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God. Oh, we laugh because it's true. We laugh because it's really depressing. It's about all you can do is laugh. Yeah, if we're going to talk a lot about deconversions, I think, today, and if you did believe in God, I think Twitter is very good evidence that none exists.
Yeah.
So, we welcome to the show. Who are you?
I'm Neil. Last name's actually Bernstein, but that's easy to find out. So I'm not exactly.
I didn't dox him. I did not.
It's okay,
Nobody
man.
on In Time doxed him. This was self-doxing. I don't want to.
Yep.
Nobody give a YouTube strike because our guest doxed him. This is not gross misrepresentation.
Well, I'm sure most people know you from YouTube, but for those who don't, what do you do?
Well, what I do usually is I have live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday whenever I have something scheduled. Sometimes I have days off, obviously for family reasons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to people about why they left religious belief. Sometimes why they left religious belief for another one. Like I've spoken to many pagans, like people you might be familiar with, like Ocean,
right?
Keltoy, right?
Yep.
And they're basically their journeys from that belief system to becoming in a lot of cases, the atheist activists that they are today, or just basically because I've spoken to a few that have had to remain, we'll say, anonymous,
Mhm.
right? Because there are, especially a couple of ex-Muslims that I've spoken to,
Hmm.
are they still live in areas where it's dangerous to be an atheist. So
Well,
um,
some ex-Muslims will just have family that will try to hunt them down and do terrible things to
yep,
them. They can even
yep,
live in, beautiful, wonderful secular countries and still need to hide their identities.
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Because I mean, I didn't interview this person, but I was told about someone else who moved away from the place that they lived in, where it was quite dangerous, to somewhere where it was considered a Western country, and they were followed
Yeah.
by a friend of the family that was looking for them to try and bring them back, we'll say. But we all know that there is more involved to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's basically what I do, and I've had some really really great conversations with many people that people already know that are already very prominent in the atheist community as well. Um, People like Aaron Ra or Eric Murphy, Jamie from the Talk Heathen, Seth Andrews has been on, people like that. Tomorrow I'll be talking with Mr. Anthony Magnabosco, so should
I
be
actually went on your
quite.
show. That was fun.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was during. I think that was during season one, actually, when the first year I started doing it.
I think you
If I
might be
remember.
right. Yeah. Well, what I love about your channel is it's become this like massive diary. You know what I mean of deconversion stories, and they're
Mm-hmm.
all so interesting. And some of them are very similar. Some of them are
Hmm.
wildly different, and it's really
Hmm.
interesting to see how all these different people what what prompts them to leave Abrahamic religions. You know what I mean?
Yep, or even other ones,
Yeah.
because I've spoken to an ex-Hindu as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, go ahead,
So,
man.
well, no, I was curious. I have a whole bunch of questions. One of them at a minimum is, um, well, I'm interested in A, why you find this so fascinating, and what it is you find fascinating about it, and B, which one do you think was the most surprising and or the most fascinating interview you've done?
Oh, that's a tough one. There have been quite a
Keeping in
few.
mind that Ansgar is here right now.
No, Ansgar's was actually a really good one, and I think we had a good time talking about it. But Ansgar, it was you didn't really have to fear for anything, or you
No.
didn't really have issues with family.
Some small ones. Like I still,
Right,
my mother freaked out a little bit, but yeah.
right. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, and I mean, one of the ones I think that surprised me the most was probably Eric Murphy's. As I didn't really know much about Eric when I had him on the show. All I knew was from what I knew of him on the show and the time that I called in and talked to them.
Mhm.
Um, and when I found out he was adopted, like me, and we started going a little bit into that and about our moms and stuff, and there's a few tears shed. So when you get into a discussion that ends up being somewhat of an emotional roller coaster, I find those are the ones that tend to stick with you a little more than say some of the others. Another one I found quite interesting was my friend Atheist, who's a disabled army vet, and his story was quite fascinating, for one, because he brought up a little bit of the military stuff and his background, where he was I believe he had some issues with like being beat up a bit by um, religious parents, I think, or a school or something like that. Anyways, um, and that was pretty. It was a tough story to hear, especially the condition that he's in now after his service and stuff like that. And I think that actually hit me more than anything else in the story is how he has to live now. And you'd think that somebody who was in a position like that might want to lean on faith again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's an adamant atheist, and his wife takes care of him and stuff like that. So
Trying times can really go either way. It can drive you toward faith, or it can definitely drive you away from it.
sure, yeah.
He and I met, and he and I met under a set of circumstances. I'm an anti-theist. I'm quite a strong anti-theist, but I do have some reasonably significant limits to that, and I'm an anti-theist in the classical sense, meaning that I object mostly to the Abrahamic religions. I don't object to deism, pantheism, polytheism for the most part. So
Mhm.
I had bumped into him when he was being beat on Twitter. Beat on is, I guess, this relative, but he had been beat on Twitter by another anti-theist because he had said that what sustained him through his hospital stays was hope. And this other anti-theist was like, "Oh, hope is irrational. You can't have hope." I said, "So first of all, hope's not irrational. Second
Bullshit.
of all, I
No,
don't."
it's not.
Hope is necessary to survive, man. Oh,
Well, and this is one of my objections actually to anti-theism in general, and activist. And I became reasonably close after this, but it was just sort of one of the things that I do object to, and that's the story I most remember when I talk about why I have more atheists and anti-theists blocked on my own Twitter account than I have Christians, because when I see bullying behavior, most of it, so much more of it comes from our side. It's really disheartening, and when it comes from our side to members of the atheist community who are really good people who I have hope, excuse me, considering what he's going through.
well, I think a lot of that comes from, you get a lot of particularly young people who are coming out of cultures where religion and these things are the status quo, and they want to be rebellious. You know what I mean? And sometimes it takes some years in the atheist community to kind of chill out and realize that you don't have to
Yeah.
be a jerk. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of atheists, when they are fresh out of a belief system, at least probably from many of the ones that I've noticed, anyways, are quite angry for like a year. It
Yeah.
seemed to be, and so they're ready to lash out at any believer that's pushing their, what they're calling nonsense or whatever, and they kind of go to town on them, and I don't think that that's the best angle to take. I'm more of the let's talk about this. Let's have a discussion. What convinced you that what you believe is real? That kind of thing, right? And
Yeah.
rather than going, you're full of bullshit, and stuff you believe is bullshit, and your God is bullshit, and Jesus is bullshit, and and it's like, well, you're making a lot of claims that require some evidence as well, sport. So
Yeah.
Let's you should slow down a bit there and try and be a little bit more reasonable in your discussions with this kind of thing.
Dot Nerd says it's like detoxing from religion. Yeah, it kind of is,
In a way, yeah.
Well, and I'm curious. I also wonder. I think sometimes it's also like somebody who gets a new toy, and all of a sudden that's their favorite toy, and they whenever you get a new idea or a new worldview, all of a sudden you really fervently believe everybody has to believe it, and it's the only possible worldview, and anybody who doesn't
Yeah.
believe it is doing a huge disservice to themselves, you, the world, their pets, the whole 9 yards. And
Yeah, I went through a little bit of that myself too.
how
Yeah.
much of that do you find in some of the deconversion stories you've been listening to? How much was there anger? How much was there the depression? What are some of the things that you've found often, if
I'm
anything? Has there been common things or?
yeah, a lot of them, when they first deconvert, they're quite upset, we'll say, because in their eyes they've been lied to. But that's not necessarily the case. It's not that people that they trusted, like family and friends, have been out and out lying to them, because those people believe what they're telling them. So it wasn't necessarily, quote unquote, a lie. They were just sharing the same indoctrination with them as they were shared or had shared to them from their parents, and keep going back and back and back, right? I mean, let's face it, you believe what you believe, usually where you were born, right? So if you're
Right.
born in
And if
America,
you honestly believe that if you don't, teach your child these things, horrible things are going to happen to them,
right,
you'd be a horrible
right,
person to not indoctrinate them.
right,
If
and
you,
they think it's a
yeah.
good thing,
Mhm.
right, to teach the kids this. So, oh shit, wow, haven't heard from those guys. Oh, sorry, I just got a notification that Epic Mealtime is doing something. I'm like, what? Really? They're still going?
Oh, sure. You want to go on somebody else's show. I
No, no,
understand. You're
it's just they're
talking with
doing a.
us while he's surfing. He's literally surfing
I'm
through
not
YouTube,
surfing
going,
it. It was
"What
a
other channels could I be on
notification
right
that came up.
now?" Uh,
My
so
notifications haven't been disabled, so they'll pop up once in a while.
now we had on our on Rom, and we talked about his deconversion story a little bit.
Hmm.
And one of the things we had done we had labeled it as the deconversion of Aaron Ra. And I think everybody had sort of assumed he had always been an atheist. So we got a whole bunch of messages beforehand going, "This better not be clickbait." I was like, "No, but I think one of the things that surprised me was, and he was still, I think it seems to me, even as a believer, he was still on Ra. He still sort of approached things in the way that he is now very well known for. But
Hmm.
he did also. It seems like he was constantly looking for another replacement. He was looking for, other
Yes.
kinds of woo. He was looking for the things that he believed in for any given period of time. Mostly because he watched Star Trek and believed Leonard Nimoy. um,
Right.
so, so do you find that people do try to find ways to replace it? Is
Many have. I think actually, Aaron and I were discussing that we both had very, very similar paths away from our respective belief systems, where both of us ended up in paganism for a while, even a little bit of Wicca, or he got into the Egyptology sort of stuff, and I did as well. I even have a figure around here of Anubis somewhere that was part of an old shrine that I used to have, and
Yeah,
um,
my path out was a little different. I went, kind of straight from Christianity to, atheism, but along the way I was one of those sort of like new ager Christians that believed
mhm,
that, the God had many facets and everyone knew this God by other names and crap like that.
mhm,
That was
mhm.
kind of my thing. And then but I went straight from kind of that to just straight, atheist. I kind of argued myself out of my own religion by accident.
Yeah, that'll happen from time to time, right?
Yeah.
So,
so.
yeah, yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
please. No, you first, and because
I was
mine's
just
gonna
going to
take a
say,
while.
Arn's and mine's stories were quite similar in that respect. So we had a couple of good laughs about that. And of course, he was making fun of the beer I was drinking at the time because it wasn't as dark as his. So, yeah.
Well, so now here's something that it seems to me you don't get asked a lot.
Hmm.
What's your deconversion story?
I actually, on April 1st of last year, for a bit of well, it wasn't really an April Fool's joke or anything, but I had my friend Randolph come on and interview me about mine.
I thought I was
So,
being original. I missed it by like 4 months.
which I thought was kind of a neat idea. We'll do that for the April 1st. We'll have somebody interview me about my story instead. So that story, I've told it, but basically, I'll nutshell it a bit here for you. I'm an adoptee. I was given up for birth, or after given up for adoption at birth. I was conceived by a Christian couple. One was Catholic, and the other one was some sort of other denomination of Christianity. And my birth father, was the Catholic side, and his mom was very staunch Catholic. So when they were in the back seat of a '57 Chevy forming me, um, which I always thought was pretty damn cool. And there's a really weird link to that because my actual adopted father was holding on to a '57 Chevy Bel Air hardtop two-door for his firstborn son, and which would have been me. Unfortunately, my grandmother told him that he had to sell it before they moved up from Florida to Montreal. So anyway, so I was born to them, but given up for adoption and then taken home on Halloween Day by a Jewish couple.
That's pretty
So
cool
I was,
on Halloween. Nice.
yeah, I know, right? So that's my little tie to Halloween. I got to have my birthday on Halloween a few times too when I was little, which is always fun. You go out for some pizza, then you go home and you start trick or treating with all your friends. It's pretty cool.
That is awesome.
But so I was raised Jewish, and I do remember going to Hebrew school because we go to Hebrew school when we're quite young, and we start learning about the old biblical stories, stuff like David and Goliath or Samson and Delilah, the old typical Old Testament type stories, the Maccabees, the story of Hanukkah, that kind of thing. And there was just things about it and I asked my teacher, I remember asking my teacher, I said, teacher, are these real stories or because they sound a lot like other mythologies that I've heard before, like we've got like talking animals and stuff and that just sounds like something out of Greek mythology or something like that, right? And this giant that David went up, that also sounds like a mythological type beast or something. And she kicked me out of the class for the rest of the day. I kept questioning. So I've always sort of had my doubts about these stories, I guess, even at a young age. And then by the time I grew up enough to have my bar mitzvah, I wasn't sure about much of this anymore, but I still went through with it because, I mean, yeah, you kind of have to. I didn't really have a choice. And not only that, the gifts are great. I had thousands of dollars worth of gifts after the bar mitzvah. Right?
Wow. You can make some serious bank.
Yeah.
Is there an age limit on getting one of those? I mean, if I just suddenly can I just walk into a temple like tomorrow and say, "Hey, give me some cash"?
Years of study, man. Years of
Oh,
study.
son of a no, never mind.
That's way too much work.
Yeah, that's not. I'm not studying. Never mind. All right, I was almost on board. Okay, please continue.
So and and my bar mitzvah was actually kind of funny because I'm 13 years old, puberty's a thing, and I'm trying to sing my Haftorah portions, and of course my voice is changing, and I'm like when I'm singing, and the whole place is just cracking up. And it was more like the Neil's bar mitzvah comedy hour is more like what it was. But anyways, it's flash forward a few years, and I get shipped off to Israel because I'm a bit of a bad kid, stealing cars and breaking into places. So they figured, let's send him to Israel. And
are you sure you're Canadian? Don't they
well, he left an
to
apology note in the parking space.
Oh, okay. Well, that would okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, there was a garbage strike in 1980 where I live, and my buddy and I and a couple other of our friends had a few beers, and we're like, I'm all of the ripe age of about 14 at the time. And he's like, "Hey, let's go take your mom's boyfriend's truck out for a spin." I'm like, "Okay, who drives here?" Because I'd never driven. And he's like, "I don't know. No one's driven." He said, "Well, we went and did it anyways, like the idiots we were." And I was the only one that had the least amount to drink. I'm all right. I'm driving. And I'm getting into this thing. I'm coming out on the main road, and I'm like, I don't even know what side of the fucking road to be on because I'm in panic mode. And I'm okay. No, all right. We're supposed to be on the right side. It's England that's on the other side. And I kept driving down the road, and I'm like, I really don't want to go onto a main road, so I'm going to make a quick left here. And of course, this thing's top heavy with garbage. The two big panel boards up the side, and it's top heavy with garbage. So I make a left-hand turn at about 30 kilometers an hour, which for you guys is probably closer to about 15 miles an hour. And I turn the wheel, and the thing flips, and a sideboard flies off the truck and cuts this fucking car in half.
Oh my God.
Almost in half. What do? Well, we make sure we're okay. Jump out of the driver's side window because that's the only window that's still open, and we all ran away. And we would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for the meddling kids. No, I'm just kidding.
It wasn't for the meddling police officers.
Well, one of the guys decided to go back to the scene, and he was the one that was on the far right. So he had this big scrape on the side of his face. So they put two and two together, and of course,
they're waiting for idiots who go back to the scene. I mean, how many times? I mean, can you be any more trite?
Well, people are criminals because they're not fucking smart. Let's put it that way.
That's I can't tell I can't tell you how many police officers I've spoken with, and they've said, Nick, I got to tell you a little secret. Cops aren't all that bright. The biggest thing we got going for us is the criminals are just a little bit dumber.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. But I ended up going to Israel. They decided, yeah, and you know what? It was a great 2 years of my life. I did grade 11 and 12 over there. And one thing I learned is people that live over in Israel really aren't that religious. They're fairly secular in Israel, except for the actual, yeah, except for the religious people like the Orthodox.
Yeah,
And
except I mean, there's a separate. Yeah, there's an Orthodox caste essentially,
yeah,
but if you're
yeah,
not in that group, they're pretty. I mean, it's almost a religious.
it is a
Yeah,
lot of ways. Yeah, they don't really. They're traditional. They do the Hanukkah. They do the holidays. But after that, nobody really ever talks about anything. They're quite secular there. You can even get pork products in Israel, which a lot of people found really weird. But
listen,
hey,
if there's
Hey,
as much
that's
cash involved as you seem to suggest, I'd be doing those holidays too. I'd be like, okay, Hanukkah, for the sixth candle, I want $1,000, and
the
I
60. Oh
mean
no, you don't get stuff like that, man.
uh,
that is genuinely surprising to me. I learned something new. That's crazy. But I mean, it makes sense. You know, my family still we're all atheists, but we still celebrate things like Christmas, and
Sure, why not?
yeah, it's just
I mean, we get the
cultural.
day off. What else are you gonna do?
Right, right, exactly.
Get together with family, drink and eat lots of food and have fun and exchange gifts, showing your appreciation for everybody. And that's what it's about.
Yeah,
For me,
exactly.
it's just about, I do both Hanukkah and Christmas because my biological folks are Christian. And well, I've been doing that for a long time. My grandmother married a Christian guy who was the calculus professor over at UBC. So that's when I really got into math and science at a young age, thanks to him. And I used to read his old fucking books from like the 50s on calculus and stuff like that. And I still got a few. I got planetary theory, particle theory, and a couple other ones of his that I was able to keep that I started reading when I was like 12. But yeah, just hanging out there. Um, and he always had a train set that he would build around the tree. So we'd always get to play with the train set, and it was great having both holidays. All my friends at school were jealous.
yeah,
Um,
I'm jealous. I'm trying to figure out how you worked this. This sounds like a really good. I love it. You're an atheist and you're doing every holiday. I'm surprised you're not like, okay, now on to Vishnu, and what we're gonna do is um.
oh man. So
Don't
I
get me
have.
started on that one.
Oh boy. Okay, I think there's a story there, but all right.
There is. You guys remember that I was attempting to donate a kidney to save a friend of mine's life.
I do
I
remember
I
that.
I,
Uh,
I was I was gonna get into that. Yeah, I remember that.
this is a little over a year now. My friend Phil is Indian, so he's a police officer here in New Westminster, and he phoned me up one day and he said, Neil, you got quite a presence on social media. I was wondering if you could help me, maybe find someone to donate a kidney because I need a kidney. I'm on a list, but they don't know how long it'll be. Um, and I said, I'll tell you what, Phil, I'll try first. All right, I'll donate one, and if it doesn't go through, then I'll find someone for you, or to try anyways. So I went through all the testing, and I passed all the tests except for the last one when they went in and they put you right under, which is a trip. I hadn't had that happen to me for a long time. And they put the gas mask on you. Okay, you count from 10 backwards. I'm like, I'll probably make it all the way to 110. You're done. You're out. Right? But they found two anomalies: a small stone in my left kidney, and the very top portion of my right kidney doesn't flush as well as the other one. So they didn't want to remove either one because it could be an issue for me as well, right? So they didn't want me end up on the table having need one. And I said, well, you know what? I'm willing to take that risk. My friend Phil, who's a police officer, has undoubtedly put his life on the line for people he didn't even know before. And he's got a family of 4 kids. His wife and his mom lives with them. They would seriously miss him if he was to die. So I said, I'm willing to take that risk to save somebody of this kind of caliber. And the surgeon board they're like looking at each other like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Does he not realize that he could end up dying? And I said, I'm fully aware of that, but I'm still willing to take that risk. But they totally denied me even after I appealed. But that's where the Indian part comes in, because my buddy Phil's mom is a fantastic cook, and I've celebrated some of their holidays with them too, like Holi and a couple other ones, and the food is just fucking phenomenal. It's just the part that kind of threw me for a loop is when they throw all that colored powder stuff at you. You get covered in the I had a nice long shower after that one. But yeah, so I have done other holidays as well in that respect.
Yeah, although their cure for depression is to sacrifice a live goat and bathe you in the blood, which apparently I've heard there was a guy who tried it and said it worked, but yeah.
Well, I guess you get really happy you're not the goat. It's gotta be pretty life affirming.
Almost as ridiculous as the Jewish belief that if you cut open a chicken, or you swing it over your head 3 times and you put all the sins of the city into this chicken.
Oh yeah. Well, that's not scapegoating. That's like
scape chickening.
Scape chickening. Is that even a thing? I guess we've invented a new thing. Well, this is so this you have a reputation as one of the nicest human beings on Twitter. Now, before we go any further with that, that's a reasonably low bar. I mean, Hannibal Lecter could probably clear that bar. But nonetheless, I think in this case, it's probably reasonably well deserved, nonetheless. So I remember I was following you.
Mm-hmm. I looked behind. I didn't see it.
You didn't engage. Well, I know, because apparently I wasn't big enough for you to acknowledge my existence. And that's okay. I understand.
Nick, ever since I started seeing your stuff on Twitter, I had the utmost respect for you. So.
Well, thank you. Well, now I'm gonna have to watch how I make fun. No, I'm not. I'm gonna keep making fun of you. But at any rate, thank you very much. But I.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, so you have a reputation for being one of the nicest guys on Twitter. There was the kidney where you basically said, it's all right if I die. I want to take the risk, and you donate blood quite regularly. You got this, if I recall, from your father. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, hang on one second. I'll grab something real quick here. It's just up right here. So hang on here. Ooh. I keep forgetting that my brand new headphones are the cord is not as long as they once were. My father. We didn't get this till after he passed away. It's an award from Canadian Blood Services. It says honoring our lifeblood, which is why I named my company for putting on music shows with different bands, and then in between bands we talk about donations and try and sign people up and whatnot. Frank Bernstein was an honored donor. That was my dad. In recognition of your contribution to Canada's blood system, 2011. He passed away just before this was awarded to him from bladder cancer. He had 532 donations before they told him he couldn't donate anymore. His goal was to pass at least 700 before he passed away, but he got pretty damn close. So I decided in his honor that I would start up what they call a Partners for Life group. David will be familiar with what that is, I'm sure. And when I went in to talk to them about doing this, they said, "Oh, wow, that's a great idea. I think that's really a noble thing that you're doing in your dad's memory." And I said, "Well, yeah, I think we can, I could probably get a whole bunch of people, and we could probably break my dad's records in the first year." And she goes, "Well, that's very unusual for a single person started Partners for Life group." And I said, "Yeah, but you guys haven't been dealing with somebody like me before." And they kind of look at each other like, "Is this guy serious?" And anyways, so I started up the group. I went on TV. I did a couple of global news spots and a bunch of newspapers. I had a few connections with some of the local media. And they came in and filmed my first donation. And by the end of the year, I had just under 200 people in my group. And we did 681 donations in the first year. And that my initial pledge is under their guidance was 50 donations. So I literally blew away my initial pledge by 1,240% by their math. So I did another news spot and had a cake there, and we all did a little bit of celebrating. And after that news thing, I managed to recruit another like 40 odd people into the group that saw it and decided to be part of it. I now have about we're closing in on 300 people in the group, and we do on average anywhere between 450 to 550 donations a year with that group of people. I'm sure some did it initially just to be a part of it, and then they may not go as often as they used to. But I'm dedicated now, and I want, which is sucks, but it doesn't suck because I kind of want more tattoos and I kind of want to do stuff like that, but I can't anymore because I am dedicated to donating blood and saving people's lives. And one of the things that Canadian Blood Services does now that I think is really cool, and they took the cue from places like Finland and Iceland and stuff like that who are doing this, where they'll send you a text to let you know that your blood is now on the way to a hospital to be used on a couple of patients or a patient or whatever. So, because every donation you do can actually save 3 people's lives. So, if you think about it, my dad's 532 donations, there was a potential that he saved over 1,500 people's lives.
Well, and I did the math on that. Assuming he started at the age of 18, he was donating every 2 weeks.
No, not quite. Oh yeah, when you do whole blood, you can only do it every couple of months or every 56 days. That's the law here in Canada. When you do platelets, you can go in once a week and do it because they take out your blood, remove the platelets, and then they put the blood
and then stick it right back in.
Yeah. But it's a much longer process. But he brings, I bought him a little iPad thingy for it, and he could watch movies or work on a computer or stuff like that, right? So. Yeah.
Do you want to tell people? Do you want to tell our audience where they can find more information on this?
Absolutely. Well, Canadian Blood Services, if you're in Canada, you just type in canadianbloodservices.ca. And if you are in Canada, and you can be a member of my group anywhere in Canada. I actually now have members across Canada, a couple in Alberta, one in Saskatchewan, 2 out in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and one in Newfoundland. You guys might know her, Nadine. She's become a member of the group. So you can type in blood.ca. I think that's what it is, blood.ca. Yeah, sorry, not CanadianBloodServices.ca. And all the information is there. And if you would like to join my Partners for Life group, which I would love if you did, you can actually, I think you send them an email through the website somewhere asking them about the information on doing that. Or you can send me an email to 604atheist@gmail.com. And I have information here that I will be happy to send you, including a registration sheet if you're into it.
Why 604? Oh, yeah, please.
Just for our people, I've just put those links in the chat.
There you go. Oh yeah, /English, right? Because we also have the French language here for some reason.
Gotcha.
Nobody speaks French in the West, by the way.
I completely spaced my question. Oh yes, why 604?
604 is the original area code for Vancouver Lower Mainland, where I live. So,
okay.
There you go. I doxed a little bit more. Everybody already knows this about me, man. So I'm not doxing myself. Don't worry about it.
So,
I don't even
a couple
care.
questions.
Come at me, bro.
So when you were rather religious, how did you justify the difference between religious belief and scientific fact? Because I find like every religious person has something different that they did.
Well, I've really never been overly religious. I always believed in science as well as just went along with the religious stuff because I'm trapped in my parents' house and really didn't have a choice. Right. And when I got out of there and came back, that's when I started to get into all the pagan type worships and stuff like that. And called myself a Wiccan for a while and called myself a fucking druid for a while and did some ritualistic stuff like that. And I remember one time, this is one of my favorite stories that I used to like to tell. Being a Wiccan, I figured, I need cash, man. Is there a money spell? And the girl that I was dating was right into that stuff. So she goes, oh, yeah. And she showed me this one. And she goes, here's the ceramic bowl you can use. And there's this little, a little bit bigger than those teacups they give you in like a Chinese restaurant. It's maybe about twice the size of one of those. And she says, and here, you've got a silver dollar. Now put the silver dollar inside the bowl, fill it halfway approximately with water. And around midnight, go outside and catch the image of a full moon over top of the silver dollar. And then you say this chant, which I can't remember for the life of me. But I did this chant. You say it 3 or 4 times or whatever the fuck it was. And sure as shit, I'm doing this and I'm out there and I'm like, okay, here we go. It's shit's going to come rolling in. And the day before, I'd put an ad in the paper to sell my VCR because it was a piece of junk and I just want to get rid of it for like $50 or something. And the next day, somebody came to pick up my VCR, so I made $50. She goes, "See, I told you it worked." I said, "No, I put an ad in the paper for this. That doesn't count." And I'm doing scratch and wins all day, and nothing's standing out. I'm like, this is bullshit.
But I'm curious, like when you did believe, like obviously you believed in science, right? And even your passive.
Well, I didn't believe in science. The science that I knew about was showing me that it was actually something real. So there really wasn't a need.
Okay, poor choice of words. But what I mean though is like, okay, so you have this scientific understanding, right? And then you have these, kind of passive beliefs that you weren't really strong about. Maybe even you can discuss with the paganism. Like in your mind, did you ever say these are in conflict and this is how I justify them, or did you just not think about it?
Sure, I when you think about some of those biblical stories out of Judaism, the original book, by the way, you had the Genesis and you had the Exodus stories, and over time you learned that they never happened. So I always thought in the back of my mind, well, there's no bloody way this stuff happened. Even then, knowing what I knew then, and now that they've even got more information on that stuff, and there's no possible way there's enough water to even cover the Earth to that length or to that depth. And these are facts that you find out over time. And unlike a lot of the fundamentalist believers, I wasn't hand waving away all the evidence all the time. I was, saying, hey, there's some validity to these claims that this could not have happened, right? I was never a big believer in most of that stuff anyways, but after finding out more scientific stuff about it, it firmed up those beliefs that it was just pure nonsense. So, and even like magic, I used to have a saying, "Oh, magic is just science that we don't yet understand." Right? But and I'll be honest, man, that's just a horseshit line, really. I mean, anything that we do find out, like, what about people that made, like homeopathy stuff that ended up, well, yeah, we know that willow bark is used in aspirin, and it wasn't at one time, but it eventually became part of medicine. So anything that is valid will eventually make it into the scientific realm.
Right.
Okay. And if it doesn't, then it's horseshit. Okay. So there you go.
Well, so I have a bit of a personal question, and your last story inspired this much. Let me know. It may be a little embarrassing, but I think there are people who want to know this. What is VCR?
What is what?
A VCR. You mentioned a VCR.
A video cassette recorder is what a VCR is. Yes, you guys remember
than I am.
VHSs and Betamax. We had a Betamax at first. And
oh my god!
A Sony Beta, but a top loader, and it had a cord on the remote, for fuck's sakes. And my dad brought it home. The very first movie I ever watched on videotape was Airplane.
I think that was probably the first one I watched too.
I remember when the neighbor bought a 4-head VCR, and you could pause the movie and you didn't get the squiggly lines across the screen. That was like technological innovation at its finest.
It was like VCR HD.
Right.
Freeze frame. Right. And that came great. That was great when we got porn, right? Because it was porn that ultimately decided that VHS would win the war over beta.
It was well, I remember I had always thought it was basically marketing. It's an argument I use against capitalism, that marketing is what allowed an inferior format, which was VHS, to win over. But now you're saying it wasn't marketing. It was porn.
It was marketing, but it was marketing that was done through the porn industry.
Well, because sex sells.
Okay.
Right. So.
Well, obviously.
Oh yeah, clearly. I mean, I wouldn't have bought this bandana if there wasn't a good-looking guy wearing it in the store. Oh wait, that was in a mirror.
So I'm curious.
Uh,
I know we don't normally ask each other questions, Nick, but what about you? What did you do to justify the gap between science and religion when you were a believer?
I was a light believer. So in my mind, I mean, the Bible was always kind of more just sort of rough guidelines that nobody really
Metaphorical.
followed.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
you
mine. I
got it.
was always, yeah, it's poetic, it's
Yeah.
metaphorical. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I could only say that because I hadn't actually read the thing, and if I had read it and realized that it advocated for rape, slavery, murder, genocide, and all these other things, I might have said,
Infanticide.
yeah,
Hey, that
infanticide. I
was
might have, or even metaphorically,
metaphorical genocide, rape, and
metaphorical
murder.
infanticide. Yeah, smash the enemies of your babies upon the rocks, or the
Yes,
babies
yes.
of your
Hey,
enemies
listen,
upon the
if
rocks
you
in
Not
your
only
read
that,
that
hearts.
story
In your
in the
hearts.
Is
right,
he that
if
does
you
that.
pray before reading it and you read it in the right way, you'll get a different message out of it. I'm not sure what message that is, but apparently you get a different message.
Well, I think if you pray before murdering the babies, it's okay. I think that's really.
Oh, right.
I do this in the name of thee, O Lord. Smash.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and don't get me started. I get into that all. It's just like it's insane. As the people are sitting there going like, "Well, it's a different time. It was appropriate." Well, gee, doesn't
No,
God?
it's
Never
never
mind.
appropriate to own
It's
another
never
human being's
appropriate.
fucking property.
I get a little concerned when an atheist has to tell a Christian what that smashing babies against
Well,
rocks really is
one of
never
my
appropriate.
one of my favorite ones is when you show them the passages for, captive women being taken, and then they're supposed to be held in the home for 30 days, and then you rape them, and then they belong to you, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
always say, well, it was a step above how people were treated beforehand.
Yeah.
This is a direct commandment from like the arbiter of morality. You would think that he'd be able to go just one step above the savages of the time.
Well, and that's basically a tu quoque. That's like saying, yes, I raped my neighbor, but my other neighbor murdered his neighbor, so it's okay.
Right.
I I mean, the defense is other people have done worse.
Hey,
That's
at least you kept her as a wife after you were done raping her. I mean, that was
Yeah, the least you could do.
right.
Well,
right.
and the other defense was, well, they didn't mean married women, which actually there is some warrant for that, but you were supposed to murder the married women, so I'm not sure which is necessarily the
Right,
preferable fate.
Right.
But at a minimum, too, they're like they were doing them a favor because otherwise they would have starved to death because there was nobody to take care of them. And I was like, it's been it's difficult to say that raping a woman is a favor. I find that's one of the ones that I have
Yeah.
difficulty with in the Abrahamic
Yeah.
religions in
Oh, yeah.
general.
Well, somebody else tried to tell me it was consensual. And it's like, well, hold on. First of all, the biblical text specifically says to force yourself. But second of all, so you really think that after 30 days after you've just murdered everyone she knows, she's suddenly going to be hot for you?
All that slaughtering, you're sexy as fuck.
oh, you're still covered in
Well-
the blood of my family. I'm so ready.
including my kids if they're good Christians. But that's the other kind of sign that this is going to sound a little strange. It's going to sound tongue in cheek, and it's only half. That's another sign that this was written by a man.
Yeah.
Which is you have the kind of writing
And a
that it's like, well, of
savage
course she's
man.
going to want the man who slew all the other alpha males, and it's like,
Well,
it's almost the.
It's
I'm
proof
such
that
a
it was
beta.
written by Bronze Age savages, not by a higher moral authority.
There's nothing moral about those stories.
No.
I'll tell you that.
No. Oh.
And,
Yeah,
and
well,
every time
well,
they try
no,
to say there is, I just shut them down. Like, you know what? Fuck you. You're
I
an
disagree.
asshole.
I disagree. One guy came along and started preaching some stuff that most of what he said I think is pretty irrefutably moral. So they nailed him to a cross and murdered him.
Can't have this
You
shit.
know, I have no problems with the preachings of treat each other with respect and love each other and yada yada. But there comes a time when if he also in the same breath is telling you that you have to worship me and my father over your family, and if
Yeah.
you don't, then I'm gonna wipe out your family kind of shit. It's like, well, fuck you,
I
asshole.
think for me that is the worst part of the Abrahamic religions, is the story of and they always say, but he didn't make him kill his son. That's the point. No. The point is he wanted to make sure he was willing to murder his child for him, because you
Yes.
have to put
Abraham,
this
and
God.
Isaac.
That is the story and the message that bothers me most about the Abrahamic religions, is the idea that this God is supposed to become before your own family. That is disturbing to me. I don't know, that at least for me, that's the most disturbing part.
Then he
I
comes
think that's
down. He comes down. He's like, I'm just kidding.
I'm just fucking with you. I'm just fucking with you. Well, no,
You've
he
been
doesn't come
punked.
down. No, he sends an angel to do it for him. He was just
Right.
like,
Yeah,
why don't you stop this shit? Get
Yeah,
off,
you
pat
do
it
it.
up
I
a
got
fucker.
Pop-Tarts in the toaster I'm going to deal with in a second here.
Yeah, listen, I'm everywhere simultaneously, but stopping him from murdering his own kid for me is really beneath me. I'll send Gabriel down.
Yeah.
This is the kind of shit you send like a second
But
order
good on
angel.
you for being willing to do it. I mean, if you hadn't been willing to do it, I would have had to condemn you.
Yeah, you'd be going to hell forever, and who knows what happens to your son. Well, that was always a great line. Abraham may have been a wonderful Christian, but who would want him for a father?
And isn't he the one that
Wasn't Abraham a Jew?
Yeah, they were all Jews. Was the other thing was just like the Jews killed Christ. That's because that's all there was. Christ was a Jew, for crying out loud. But fine.
Yeah. Oh no, there was a faction of rabbis that were in on it with Pontius Pilate, that wanted they said this guy's posing as a Messiah, and he's not the real Messiah. We know this. We've checked the books. Yada yada. Let's get rid of this guy. He poses a threat.
So Tony Designs, this isn't going to be monetized. Tony, you know what? I'm really tired of your attitude, and I think what we need here is, just because half our videos aren't monetized, I think what we need here is, you need to believe, Tony. You have to have faith. It will be monetized. Now, you need a bowl. You need like a porcelain bowl. You need a coin, a silver coin. You put the coin in the bowl. We will be monetized, Tony, and you really need to
throw up a little bit of faith into the bowl. And
that's right.
Do we have mods available right now? Because I think we have a troll.
We do.
And okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and Darth Killer.
Go for it.
Yeah, £5 super chat. Bible is moral, all right, if you read it with the perspective of Bronze Age Middle Eastern man. It's as if morality is subjective.
Yeah.
I love Darth, man. He's awesome.
Yeah, Darth Killers. I love interacting with Darth on Twitter in particular. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's good. He's good.
Yeah.
I that's one argument I make whenever they say atheistic morality is subjective. It's like, okay, so
atheistic
is Christian
morality?
Yeah, atheistic. I don't know what it means. Listen, I'm not the one who says this.
I have never met two atheists with identical morality.
This is what I hear. It's all subjective. I believe in subjective morality. It's like, well, so do you. Well, no, there's a God, and he believes in and there's therefore objective morals. Great, give me one.
Yeah, sure.
I've never had them answer one yet.
So, Neil, would you consider yourself more anti-theist, or are you like rather tolerant of religious belief?
That's a good question. Actually, I put in my profile that I'm into anti-theism. I think the word anti-theist, people can misunderstand sometimes, because I'm not against people. You can believe whatever the fuck you want, but as soon as you start advocating against basic human rights of other people, then I got a problem. If your beliefs don't lead to that sort of behavior, then I'm fine with it. You can believe whatever you want to believe. If you believe that little green men are God, I don't care. But
you're not really an anti-theist. You're more just a secular activist.
Sure. But I'm very much against religion and government mixing. I'm very much against churches like the NIFB. We even have one here.
Jesus,
so yeah.
So secular activism, because like anti-theism is really more in the ballpark of, I believe that the world would be
I'm
better
against
without religion,
religion.
and I want
That's
to
what I
get
mean
rid
by
of it.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Which is
Well,
where
yeah,
I kind of am.
Right.
talk to Ocean about this, because when Ocean and I first met, I had said I was an anti-theist. He says, "Okay, so you oppose me." I was like, "No, you're a deist. You're not a theist." It's like, deism is a subset of theism, Nick. I was like, "No, it's not. It is in modern theism, but in classical theism, it's not."
I do
And
actually
I
oppose polytheism too.
I'm sorry, what?
I actually do
Oh, you
oppose
do? Yeah,
polytheism
yeah.
as well.
I know you do. I don't. I'm of the mind that, yeah, if it's, listen, I don't really care what the beliefs are, and there is an argument to be made, and it's not a bad argument that any kind of irrational belief, but we're always going to have irrational beliefs, and they're not the cause of irrational behavior. As long as your beliefs are limited to yourself, and you're not using uh, an invisible man in the sky as your warrant to tell other people how to live.
I would
as
argue
long as I'm
that
not doing that, I'm cool.
plenty of polytheistic beliefs do some significant damage.
Some.
You find I'm not saying Ocean's a great guy. I don't think his beliefs lead to this, but overall, I see a lot of polytheists get into things like anti-vax. I see them get into things like homeopathy and don't take your kids to the doctor, forcing veganism on their dog.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
oh my God! You just had to throw the dog in. You know what? I was okay. The dog, really?
yeah.
Fido? They're doing it to Fido too?
This is why
Oh my God!
I don't think it's realistic, but I would love to see a world without any religion. I don't think it would get rid of all irrational belief. Don't get me wrong. I just think that would be a major victory in reducing irrational belief.
You know, it's funny. There's
the man who thinks his hat gives him magical powers. I'm sorry, Neil. What were you saying?
Does it really? No,
it does. It
really
I think it does. I really, actually, that's what I'm on board with. I am totally on board with it.
There's a guy that was talking about, I can't remember who it was for the life of me. Never get old, people. Everything starts to disappear. And he's saying, if we erased the slate, all right, and humans were no longer existing, and then all of a sudden a new type of self-aware being were to arise out of this, they were to come up on this planet, evolve pretty much the same way we were, be very similar to us. Religion would still come about, because there'd be a period where you didn't have explanations for things, so you'd invent them, and that's how religion was essentially born. And but they would be completely different to what we know now. But science would remain the same. Math would be the same. Science would be the same. That wouldn't change at all. So that's the one thing that we know would be constant, is all those things remain the same. But the religions that would be born again out of a new civilization would be completely different to what we're familiar with now.
I think Penn Jillette made a very similar argument. If you wiped out all religion, started over, you'd get completely new books, completely new. But if you wiped out all science, you'd discover the whole thing all over again.
Over again.
And nobody in science invented anything. All science is discovery. Newton didn't invent anything in a scientific sense. It was discovery.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, through science, we can invent things.
Yes, absolutely.
But science in and of itself is a discovery, is a method of discovery.
Yes.
Basically.
I'm still worried about Fido. That's depressing. Vegan dogs. Who does that to a dog?
Oh man,
idiots.
There
he's traumatized me. Ansgar tells me these things, and I'm perfectly okay with human-on-human violence. But when you hurt a defenseless dog, what can you do?
Dude, time to break up Scotch.
Yeah. Oh God, tell me about it.
You got any vegan Scotch?
Whiskey. Vegan Scotch. Oh,
it's already vegan. People, relax.
Well, listen, I think we're going to start wrapping it up reasonably soon. I think the show's going great. Would love to keep going, but one of the things is Ansgar does sometimes host an after party. It's when he wants to get rowdy and doesn't want to admit he knows who I am. Those are the parties that I'm not invited to. But it's on his channel. Who the hell would deny
knowing you, Nick? You would be cool fucking guy. Who the hell would
deny?
Well,
thank you. You made my day. Well, thank you so much. And I will certainly stop by the after party. I love to hang out on that, but is that something you'd be up for? Spend a little time. Usually we bring in some members of the audience and
Sure.
they
Yeah.
chat, and that's all right.
I
Well,
do.
Ansgar will start. I think
My
Ansgar can start. I'm sorry. What?
hockey team is playing in about a half an hour, so.
Oh well, if you've got to go and like usually we try to run the after party for like an hour. So
I'll stick around for a little bit, sure, if you want.
I mean,
I still got beer in here, and I got another one in there. So.
And how long has this stream?
An hour.
Yeah, about an hour. We've got about 10 more minutes on this show, Nick. Just so you know, we've only been about 50 minutes.
All right. Oh, did we start? It doesn't matter. And I don't have a clock. I don't have a computer. I have a computer now, which is nice. This broadcast is not from my iPhone, which I think is a significant improvement over the last couple of ones I've done. I just had my iPhone mounted right here. I was like, hey, nothing to see here. This is just, oh, God.
At least you put the phone this way and not this way.
Yeah.
If there is a hell, there is a special place for people who film in portrait mode. Just saying.
Well, listen, I've got like
I did that once.
I've got like kind of trash over there because I've been rebuilding this computer. I got empty boxes. I got the whole 9 yards. If this thing were in portrait mode, you would see what a sty this is. My girls come in and they're sitting there going, "Oh, Daddy, this is really cool. We see all these books right there, and a quarter of an inch to the left is all your trash, and nobody can see it. Like, this is the coolest thing. Look at the camera. You look organized. Look at real life. There's Daddy."
Oh, but we've got a super
Daddy.
chat. Do you want to read it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You make me read the one that I can't. Koessa, 5,000. Whatever is the North Korean? Not North Korean. Jesus.
North
South
Korean currency.
North Korean, South Korean currency. Here be my tithing good sirs. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the 2 super chats we've had. Or sire. Oh yeah. Yes.
Here be my
indeed.
tithing good sires.
Yeah. Go. Oh well. There. You have to come back. I think the other thing we need to do is, if you've got a voice like that, we have to have you do the intro for the show, and here is In Time with Nicholas Soutter and Ansgar Odinson.
Nick, never do that again, please.
Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, because it's time.
Nice.
Oh God, this is gonna be. People are gonna be like, okay, is this In Time or the WWE?
Could be both.
That'd be,
but thank you very much for your support, guys, and for the super chats. And yeah, no. So oh my God, it's just like between like my computers. Oh God, it's been a nightmare. I've been calling up Ansgar at night, going, Ansgar, hold me. Yeah. And he says, Nick, no chance in hell. And
well, yeah, you're nowhere near him, so.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
All right. So, anything you want to plug? Any upcoming projects before we wrap up?
Definitely your YouTube channel. Before we do, what's your YouTube channel? And when did you
YouTube
broadcast?
channel?
You said it before, but
Is Neil the 604 Atheist? You can't miss it. It's all black, white, and red for the most part, and I do deconversion stories or swap conversion stories, I guess, from one belief to another. Because I, being a pagan once myself, I had to kind of have a soft spot for pagans as well. So I also interview them, and a couple other projects that I do have coming up. I will be doing another podcast. I believe it's going to be once a week or once every couple of weeks with Godless Mom, Courtney Hurd. She lives in the same province as I do, so. She and Mr. Oz Atheist, I think they were no longer able to continue doing theirs. So I said, well, hell, shit, why don't we do one? At least the time we don't have to worry about, because we're both in the same time zone. And she's like, fuck yeah, let's do this. Because I had her on a little while ago on my show. And I'm also going to be doing a call-in show very much akin to like the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted kind of thing. Yeah, called True North Talk. And I'll be doing it with... my friend Randolph Richardson.
I know him well.
We'll be starting up that sometime, I think, after the new year, probably closer to spring. So look forward to that. And of course, I've got some great interviews coming up on my channel for closing out of season 2, which will be the last episode will be in December on the 16th, and then I'll kick in again on January 4th. Some of the bigger names I got coming up are, of course, Anthony Magnabosco, John W. Loftus. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. He's written quite a few books. Also, I have Rachel Oates, who's actually decided to step in. I had I had Zara Kay scheduled, but her partner decided to plan a trip on that day, so she's going to go do that, which I can't blame her. So I had Rachel said she'd be delighted to step in her place. You guys familiar with Tom Jump? T Jump?
Yes, I know Tom. I know Tom well.
He'll be up on the November 25th as well, which is a Monday. And one of my favorite Down Under people, Nervardia, is going to be on as well.
Oh, awesome.
On the 27th. Yeah.
She's great.
Yes. And of course, Nakasuchi, or the Raging Atheist, is going to be on December 11th. And a very good friend of mine, Pikachu the Gay Atheist, is going to be on December the 14th. And Tao DeMille, who's relatively new to Twitter, but a great mind on her, and she argues really well with theists. So I'm going to have her up on the 16th for my final show of the year. And I don't have anything scheduled for the beginning of season 3. So Nick, we'll talk.
Oh, I look forward to it. Well, and this is I know I like all of those names. Those are I think you've done a very good job there. So it's also some pretty significant variety. Tom, yeah. I know well just because he and I both have done a lot of debates on modern day debates, and that's just sort of that was the same wheelhouse for both of us for quite some time. So
he's a smart guy, man. Yeah, should be quite an interesting conversation with him.
Yeah, he's going to be in that big chair though, which is I'm actually starting to get a little chair envy. I'm known for me it's so
at least you guys have a chair.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing, which is I get up and walk around every now and then, so I have to have a wireless headset, which was hilarious because I did that when I was on Ocean Stream once, and normally I warn people ahead of time if they don't know who I am. I was like, look, if I get up and walk away, I didn't say that to Ocean, so I was in the middle of talking with Ocean and Cirrus, and I got up and walked away, and he's like, and so I was thinking, Nick, and he's gone. Did he just leave? I was just like, no, I'm sitting here. Wait a minute, I can hear the disembodied voice of. So, but it's the chair.
He's like, bye, Nick.
God.
So on our merch store, we've got you can get the Ansgar Odinson mug, which is just the hat, and the Nicholas Lamar Soutter mug, which is just the chair, and but now it's like Tom Jump, I get chair envy because it's sort of like, I mean, I like my chair, but Jesus, he's in this overstuffed, like it takes up 2/3 of the screen.
Might as well be in a couch chair.
I know. Yeah. It's just like, well, listen, I could argue with just about anybody if I was in that kind of luxury and comfort. Well, I was just like,
I don't yet have a merch store, but I just started up my Patreon. So
nice.
Oh, nice, good.
Yeah. And I also have my PayPal me if you want to do a one-time donation to help out the cause. And of course, I do have an Amazon wish list, which has some stuff on there that I do plan on picking up myself if nobody else bothers with it. But it's just it'll take time. Right? So, yeah.
Well, I think you like I've been following you for a while. You are a lovely individual, and I think I think we wanted to discuss obviously the anti-theism that's important to both of us, but also just to have somebody who is such a
positive force.
A pillar of humanism, somebody who really you don't seem to identify as humanist per se, but I
do.
Well, perfect. And so it's been a genuine pleasure to have you on. I'm glad we were finally able to arrange it. Thank you for your patience with us. But
anytime,
it's been a thrill. So we'll have you back. I certainly look forward to you. Hit me up, and I will be on. You tell me the time and place, and I would love to do your show. So
that's great. Thank you so much for that. Speaking of humanism, I'm doing an event with Canadian Atheists and Atheist Republic on this coming Saturday in Richmond. It's a humanism event that Randolph and Vikram Parahu and myself are putting on. So awesome. We have a couple of guests that we'll be interviewing and stuff like that.
Oh, so quick question about your call-in show. Is that going to be on your channel or on its own YouTube channel?
It'll be its own YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. So we should keep in tune with your Twitter to find out more info.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll find out about it through my Twitter, through my Facebook, through my YouTube, through whatever. I don't really do Facebook much anymore, so don't expect to find much there.
Gotcha. All right.
Well. All right. Well, and now, Ansgar's got the. Have you dropped the link to that? I saw a link.
I have not dropped the link. I'm going to. I'll be dropping the link to that in just a few minutes.
Let's drop do we maybe want to just drop a link at least to your channel so people,
sure.
I mean,
there is also a link to the channel on the In Time channel
that's right.
as well.
That's right.
And
I
in
don't
the
know. I feel
description.
rusty already.
Yeah, drop the link to my channel, and guys, go sub. You won't regret it.
Absolutely. He's got our full endorsement. And Ansgar's channel, youtube.com/hatporn. And we look forward to seeing.
Love you
we
too,
look
Nick.
forward
Love
to
you too.
seeing. We look forward to. That's for not holding me. We look forward to.
Screw you! I'm going to outro.